YouTube, welcome to my channel. I'm Bella and today I'm going to be reviewing the new BBC Dracula. It is made up of 3 episodes and has Mark Gatiss as its producer of Doctor Who fame. Anyway, the 3 episodes are Episode 1, Rules of the Beast, Episode 2, The Blood Vessel, Episode 3, which is much issue and drama over this episode and lots of controversy, but Episode 3 is called The Dark Compass. Okay, so they've taken Bram Stoker's gothic horror story that is set in the 1897. That's the year 1897 it is set in. Anyway, they've taken these classic characters and managed to reinvent them. The first episode, The Rules of the Beast, is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. They take these characters that we have seen over and over again, particularly the Gary Oldman Coppola Dracula story with Rowena Ryder and all of that. Particularly good. The Rules of the Beast tops that. It is great. It's got good horror. It's creepy. It's got a vampire baby. It's got people taking people's faces off and using them. Jonathan Harker, who is normally the most boring character on the planet, is actually really well done. Really well done, and actually compared to Keanu Reeves' very wooden one, but actually I really like his delivery of those lines because it actually shows you how boring and safe Jonathan Harker is. But in Rules of the Beast, he is seen as the good man that he is. The nuns are great, they're really good. One nun in particular stands out, and that's Mother Superior. I'm saving one nun for later because we are going to get to Agatha. Do not worry. Rules of the Beast is a great episode. We have that wonderful bit where he's twisting and turning himself upside down to come out of that wolf. It is incredible stuff. And the fact that you have a hairy bloke, because they actually give Dracula, the horror of horrors, chest hair. I know, we've gone to the stage where we like clean-shaven men, though facial hair, very neat facial hair for men has come back in a hipster kind of way. Dracula is not that. You've got chest hair, people, and it is back, and also underarm hair. So Dracula is played by this Swedish actor called Klaus Bang, and Sister Agatha Van Helsing, as we all know, is played by Dolly Wells, and they are absolutely fantastic. They have such good chemistry. The lines are witty. It is funny, even though it shouldn't be. A particular line that I really liked was when Mother Superior turned to Sister Agatha and said, "But why would the forces of darkness be coming after a convent?" And then Sister Agatha wittily replies, "Perhaps they dislike criticism." And I found that so funny. It was just really good. The Rules of the Beast is brilliant. Dracula's entry is fantastic. He starts off old and gets younger as he's literally sucking the life from Jonathan Harker. But it's not just that. It's not just his blood. He's also getting his language, his knowledge. And that's something that no Dracula play or visual media of it, even TV, has actually dealt with. The fact that Dracula is somewhat a psychic vampire as well. That is it. And they've done that really well. It's great in the books, but it never has been done, I think, successfully within the TV medium or even the film medium. And here it is. Vampires are back in a big way, and this is it. He's got this swagger, this charm, but also this creepy oldness and this aristocratic manner that just tops it all off. And it's the fact that he can do it so glibly. He makes fun out of it. I mean, he's nailing down children into boxes because they are not successful vampires, just to keep the undead there. Though I do think that kind of makes him a bit like an undead sort of policeman. Hold that thought because that will come into episode 3. But I really like Rules of the Beast. It sets it off wonderfully. Mina Harker is in that episode, and she actually, you know, comes across as really strong, as a really strong, virtuous woman. And that's something that you don't see in the books. A lot of adaptations see her as, oh, just this weak female that needs rescuing, when actually Mina is really quite strong. She's not like the other female that we will come on to in episode 3. She really isn't like Miss Western at all. And we will get to that, but we're shelving that for now. Moving on to episode 3, Blood Vessel. And I really enjoyed this episode. It had a great use of signing and sign language. Yes, it did. It was fantastically good. Really, really, really good use of it, because it aided the plot. The fact that the Doctor and his daughter could communicate through signing in this secret way, and Dracula really wanted to learn that language. He says, I must learn that language, and he never got the opportunity to. It was just fantastic. I also, because that's what I really like about the psychic vampire stuff, when he gets the blood of a person, he's not just getting the blood to keep him alive, he's getting all their knowledge, all the languages that they have learnt. He's refreshing things. I really liked his dance with that old Duchess, because he danced with her when she was 18 and she remembered. And it's almost like he saves people. He sort of sees them when they're young, and when they're old, he will come back for them, and he will relive that moment when they saw him as a young man with them. So it's kind of a weird kind of way that he reflects in the people that he's with, because as soon as the old woman saw him, she knew exactly who he was, and she knew why he was there. And she's like, my mother died when she last saw you. And he was like, yes. Yes, and he danced with her. So it's this weird kind of reflection thing, because one of the things that we've noticed in this adaptation, that when Dracula looks in the reflective glass, he sees an old man. He does not see him as young. He sees his actual age, which is very Dorian Gray with the painting up in the attic, aging away. It's brilliant. They've used some really good concepts. One concept that I think that this episode really showed off really well was the fact that Dracula has no breath. He can walk underwater. If he had wanted, he could have walked under the whole of the sea to get to England. The only reason he had to go on a ship was he needed the blood. And why on earth would he stay in a box for the whole journey, which is what he does in the book, which is stupid, but hey ho. And many other film adaptations. This is really good because you get to know the passengers, the packages, the blood packages, yes, the human blood bags, doctor, nun. It is so good. Captain, cabin boy, yes, here we are. It is so, so good, so witty, and it's like a murder mystery who you all know who the killer is because he's standing there. And it's absolutely brilliant because it allows his psychic powers to be used. In the first episode, you get very much his control of wolves, his control of bats, how he can use these things. We don't really see his control of mist at all during these 3 episodes, I do have to say. But the rules of the beast really do lay it out in the first episode. They show you that he can't step over into a house that he's not been invited to, but we never really learn why. He's afraid of a crucifix or this symbol, but we don't quite know why. He won't step out into sunlight, but we don't know why. But yet he wants that reflected back. When he's taking the blood, he's taking the life of these people, an actual life, all their experiences, everything they've seen, he is gaining. So it's like he's living again through them. And that's the whole concept of the undead. The undead are dead. They cannot have a living experience. And I really liked it in the first episode. They actually said, yes, I'm trying to reproduce. Dracula did say, I mean, I am. And that's interesting. So he had that woman bride, but he also had Jonathan Harker as a bride, who was also eating flies. I love the fact that you had like the fly on the eyeball in the first episode. We should be talking about the second episode. There were so many good things. It is gory. It isn't for children. It's Dracula as it should be done, really. I am so, so pleased with it. Blood Vessel was an excellent episode. Really good, strong ending. You felt for everybody involved. Then we come along to Agatha. And the reason I've saved her till last is there's a really important thing. The chemistry that the female Van Helsing has, even though she's a nun, she says she's been interested in the dark, she's been investigating it because she wants to stop it. But does she? I know a lot of people have said, is it romantic or is it not? And I think you can read it into a lot of ways. It's more like companionship. It's almost as if she's helping him find the best way for him to exit out of life or undeath, in Dracula's case. See, now this hair is just annoying me. Yeah, it really is. And I find that really fascinating, the fact that they have this witty, charming companionship banter, and you have all of that all the way through Blood Vessel, and that's great. And it's interesting that he says he's going to make her last. she will travel with him in his veins to the new world, and that is so true. So it's really kind of creepy, like the last person he feeds on stays with him for a very long time, and I suspect many others do as well. And that's kind of creepy. It's almost like, I'm going to refresh my German, I need to drink a German person. I'm going to refresh my French, I'll drink a French person and get it. And that comes back because it's almost as if all of the peasants who were terrified of God, he's absorbed that, and that's why he's afraid of crosses and crucifix and can't step over like the bread that they use in the Lord's Supper or the sacrament or whatever you want to call it, or he can't step over the Bible when it's put down because it's God's word. And that's quite interesting because it's a culture, it's a religion that he's been draining, and that's given him these. So he's not only kept his aristocratic bearing and his aristocratic taste, but because he's had to eat peasants as well, which is an indication of the whole notion of aristocracy and monarchy and capitalism and whatever you want, to any exploitative system where you have workers working and people making profit off the back of them. Anyway, moving on from being a Marxist. That is hugely interesting because it has influenced him. He has become very set with his rules, and once you understand those rules, you can then work out a way of defeating him, and that's what Sister Agatha has done, even though, and Dracula has allowed it, because what he says of her, he says all that insight, all that learning, all that knowledge, all that evil. And that's interesting because knowledge is both good and bad, but it's how you use it. And it's interesting that Agatha says, oh, I've lost my faith, but the reason I'm staying is, like many women who are in a loveless marriage, I'm staying because I want a roof over my head, which is interesting in itself. The last episode, the third episode, is the most controversial, the Dark Compass, because what's happened is Dracula has stayed at the bottom of the sea and 123 years have passed. So it's modern day, and I really like the idea of bringing him into the modern day. The only problem with that has meant that him and Sister Agatha lose that chemistry. They lose that connection to these two characters that are having this great stalemate. All of that builds up because you kind of want in the third episode them to do a lot more of actual cat and mouse running around, her trying to get him, him trying to get her. Will they, won't they, will they, won't they, will they, won't they, will they become vampires and she become his new bride and actually give him a child, and all of these weird kind of Twilight-esque fantasies that you kind of want, you are denied. But are you? And it kind of turns it on his head, and it's great to have him there because he goes, I like the flying thing. This is the new camera, and he's looking at all the technology going, does that fly? Pointing at the car. It's like, no, it just travels on the ground. It's a new carriage. I know what that is. And I like the fact that this is a Dracula who has always been interested in science and progress that way, which is really weird because he's a count, he's an aristocrat. And when he comes into a modern day house, he's like, this is a palace of kings. You've got a knowledge box pointing to the TV. You've got an information thing that you can search. You've got art anywhere you want. You've got this, you've got that. You've got this freezer box that he does stuff an abusive husband in, which is hugely interesting, and how sympathetic he is to the human condition. He's like, I didn't think in 123 years you'd advance this far. What are these? And he's like, DVDs, he's like, books that talk to you, talking books with pictures. You know, he's completely blown away. He says, this is a throne of kings. I had no idea that this technology would become so commonplace. And I think that's a really interesting reaction because that does show you that things that were once exclusive have become everyday. I mean, every human needs a fridge, or every family needs a fridge to store their food. Back in the Eon days, it would have been a barrel with salted meat or one of those underground cold rooms, you know, that only rich people would have access to. That's one of the reasons why rich people also had to feed their staff, because they were only people big enough to have a larder. Admittedly, their staff did eat the scraps and the less good bits, but they did have to feed their maids, their cooks, everybody, because they were the only people that could afford to do so. Anyway, moving on to episode 3. What I really liked about episode 3 is Dracula's relationship with Miss Weston, who is Catherine Weston in the book is a woman who's got 3 suitors, an American cowboy, a doctor who happens to be working in the mental health field, who also is working with Renfield, Dracula's original lawyer, who's like eating insects. Anyway, I really like how they've twisted that, and you had Jonathan Harker doing that even though he'd been turned. Yes, you do get Renfield and you do get the insect eating, and when he's filling in the crossword, it's like, Dracula is my master, Dracula is my master. That's brilliant. So she's got the cowboy, she's got the doctor who's treating Renfield, who's gone bonkers. Only in this you don't get that. And the third one is an English lord. Well, we don't get the English lord, he's vamoosed off. We get the cowboy who she's going to marry, and you get the doctor who is signing up to this scheme to be a willing donor of blood to Dracula. Quite crazy. See, that's where it falls down. I love the fact that they film in Whitby. Love the Abbey. Love it, love it, love it. Love that. That's brilliant. The whole Dracula in organisational thing with the whole, like, equilateral triangle thing turning around, that was cool. That did look cool. And him pointing to the toilet saying, why do I need this? Why is it here? Why have you given me this? I'm a vampire. I do not excrete or urinate. This is pointless. I liked that. But it kind of detracted from everything else, because what would have been nice would have been him exploring around a little bit more. But then again, you've lost the Sister Agatha connection, which you really wanted to continue. Only how you get around that, you bring one of her descendants, who unfortunately is dying of cancer, you know. Yeah. Just so you can bring Sister Agatha back, because she and Dracula's tit for tat have been the backbone to this whole story. Anyway, back to Miss Weston. She's got 3 suitors in the book. In this, she's only got 2. She chooses the rich American. She's going to marry him, but she's cheating on him with Dracula. And it's interesting that in this version, to make it acceptable after the whole Me Too movement and Harvey Weinstein scandal and various other things, is Dracula asks for her consent. He says, may I? May I? May I? And that's kind of interesting, because I feel that all the way along in through episode 1, 2 and 3, he has always either given his victim something that they want, like that lady from the blood vessel, you know, he showed her what her life could have been. He said, I thought you'd like to see that before I suck the blood out of you. I thought that was really nicely done, because it's his way of sort of asking. So he gets people to come willingly. Though in the 3rd episode, he's asking Miss Weston directly, may I do this? May I drain your blood? And she willingly does. And that's why she's his favourite bride in the end, even though she does get burnt to a crisp, and he likes her ugly, because she is what he sees in the mirror every day, and he can't escape his original reflection, how old he's become, but she's always like that. And I think that is an interesting relationship, and I liked how that played out, and that could have only played out in modern day. That being said, you lose something. You did lose a big part. The 3rd episode is hugely annoying, because you've got that science bit which kind of works but kind of doesn't, and then you get the lawyer getting them out, you know, because they're denying Dracula his rights, which is good. But they do get that vial. That vial is very important, because Susan, who is Agatha's descendant, drinks that, and therefore the spirit or the blood of Agatha comes back, and it's basically Agatha then drives the Susan bot, which is kind of really weird, because Agatha has become like parasitic, which is interesting. So you then have the medical student save his love, Miss Weston, from being a vampire. He stakes her, she dies, she doesn't marry the cowboy leaves straight after her funeral, so that is nicely wrapped up. Then you have the Agatha and Dracula conversation and the final confrontation, and that's actually really interesting, and that is what we've been building and building. But it would have been nice to have had her in nun suit, even though they did give Susan like a blue thing, and it kind of did look nunny, but it wasn't, and you kind of did feel, actually, I really wanted Sister Agatha in person to be there. But the ending that they gave them was satisfactory, to be absolutely honest, because when Dracula drinks the blood of somebody who's dying, he will also die, which is something that Anne Rice uses in her books as well. Don't drink from the dead, because they will take you down with them. which is something they do use. The end of Blood Vessel is interesting. There's a boy in there who pretends to be one of the crew people that Dracula's already had as a light snack before boarding the vessel. That boy's name is Marius. Marius is a really important name in the Anne Rice Chronicles, so if they decided to film Anne Rice series using this boy, I would be very, very pleased. Anyway, that's beside the point. Also, there's another point. The whole idea of vampires being able to sparkle and glow like marble is in the literature. It's part of it, people. In Anne Rice's books, Lestat has a marble-like glow, because in Anne Rice's world, vampires' genitals don't work. They can't have sex. Okay? Obviously, in this Dracula, I get the impression that Dracula can have sex, because he says, you know, that's kind of difficult because I'm trying to reproduce. It's also interesting that he approves of Jonathan Harker, because Jonathan Harker's spirit, his soul, the person that makes Jonathan Harker, hasn't changed or become mutated or unclean whilst becoming undead. And he says, you've retained your essence of self, you are like me, you would have been great. And that's very interesting, because there is a dream in the book where you've got the three brides of Dracula all at the same time coming to Jonathan Harker, and then Dracula comes in and says, no, he's mine. And that's really interesting kind of dream. Anyway, back to the end of the third episode, The Dark Compass, you have another dream, which is Agatha and Dracula getting it on. And Dracula says, did you really think after all this time it would hurt? And that is interesting, because they both go down in death together, and you find out that no, the sunlight isn't going to burn Dracula, because it's like billions and billions of miles away from him. It's not going to hurt him at all. He can see in daylight, and that actually comes from the film Nosferatu. That's the first time that Dracula is actually sort of burned to death by the sun. But that's not actually in the books. That's not how it is. Dracula can walk around during the day. He's just really weak. He hasn't got access to his full set of powers, so he can't transform into a wolf. He can't command bats. He can't control the undead. He's just really sort of like an old grandpa shuffling about, but at a lesser extent. Or in the Gary Oldman version, he's basically a hunky Gary Oldman that can walk around but not do very much, so his powers are limited, and I kind of like that. Overall, I'm going to give the first episode 5 out of 5, the second episode 5 out of 5, purely because I love the signing and the inclusivity of the diverse cast, and it was just so witty and so funny. The third episode I'm going to give a 4.9, and that's purely because I felt denied of the whole Sister Agatha Dracula chasing round in the 1800s of Whitby and London. I felt denied that. You don't really give a monkeys about anything else, to be absolutely honest. The whole Mina creating the Jonathan Harker Foundation, yeah, that's great, but that's not what we want. The way they've done this is it is Dracula and Sister Agatha show. Every other character pales in comparison, though I did like the whole Catherine Weston storyline. Even though it was reduced to a subplot, it was good use of that character, and actually it empowered Catherine Weston and showed her how she wasn't afraid of death and made her quite a strong character, whereas in the book she is literally like, I hate to be dismissive of any female character in literature, but she is one of the weakest, purely because she's so flirty with men, and it's just not a great way to portray a woman. Like a tease, like, oh, who shall I marry? Well, I could have a lord, I could have a cowboy, I could have the good doctor. Oh, Jack, oh. And you just sort of like want to sort of stake her just on that basis, just stake her with a stake of doom. And that's before she's a vampire. And that's even in the Gary Oldman version, you want to do that to her. In fact, you want to do that to her more so than ever. I really enjoyed this version. I understand completely why the third episode was so annoying, but I liked him being in the modern day, but also I felt denied from the 1800 Agatha thing. But if they went down that route, we would have ended up with Twilight Land. And did we want to go there? We've done the whole vampires breeding and having children thing. I liked the ending as it was, as it is at the end of a third episode. Spoiler alert, if it can be called a spoiler, for goodness sake, where you had them both sort of entwined in the sun. That was so cool. So cool. Really, really enjoyed it. It was a great ride. It was witty, it was funny, it was horrific. Witty, funny, horrific, creepy. I mean, I still want to know what happened to that vampire baby. Because he said, oh, I didn't know babies could do this. I'll keep it on for a bit and see what it is. And you just sort of think, oh my God, he's experimenting on the undead, how much low he can go. And then Jonathan Harker says, you're a monster, you're evil. He says, well, you're a lawyer. I love the witty banter. It was all witty banter. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Do check it out and do give this channel a like, comment and subscribe. Let me know your own thoughts on the new version of Dracula. I thought it was particularly good. Dolly Wells was brilliant and Klaus Bang was epic. I really liked his version, even though he was a hairy monster. And yes, the naked scene in front of the nuns was brilliantly done. And I love the fact that you could tell Sister Agatha was taking a great big look at everything. And it's like, it's not your eyes that they're not looking at, they're nuns. What do you think that they're not trying to see? And then her eyes automatically look down and you just think, brilliant. Anyway, please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments. It's been awesome. I've really enjoyed discussing this version of Dracula. I thought it was really good. 2 thumbs up from me. And overall, I would give it a... See, I want to give it a 5, but it's the 3rd episode that is so controversial. I'm going to give it overall a 4.9. I really am. And that's just because I felt, how dare you take me out of the 1800s and put me in modern day. But it was good. It was a good use of him. I liked him being in that open plan living room. It was a good use of Dracula. Putting him in that science thing really did drag the whole episode down, and I'm glad that they got him out. That's my views on it. Let me know yours. Bye!